internet friends, my name is Catherine and I'm the human behind Christian Miss Couture. And today is Vlogmas day 7. I can't believe we're already no, we are halfway through, more than that even, because I only have like 11 things planned. Well, time is a concept, right? So today we're going to be doing a color inspired by one of my favorite like candy dessert, the Peppermint Bark. So we're going to be working with warm tones of browns, some red and some greens, and I really like it. And for small business highlight, I want to highlight another dyer. It might be seems counterintuitive, but I really like Madison. So this is from our collaboration when we did a Shrek inspired collection. Come on. Okay, so I need to hide my face. Okay, there we go. So this is from when we did a collaboration inspired by Shrek. So this is Get Out of My Swamp. This is a wink wink moment for January, just FYI. I really like Madison. She has a vision that, like, her brains kind of work in sync, but we still create very different colors from the same themes and stuff like that. So I just wanted to highlight her small business, and I will have a link for her Instagram and her website in the description box below. And let's get into this. And it's another day where we are making my way through my entire winter collection. But today is going to be slightly different because this is a brand new color that I'm bringing into 2025. I'm super excited. So it is going to be inspired by the Peppermint Bark. So those chocolate bark thingy with peppermint crushed on the candy cane crushed on top of it. I really like those things. And today we're going to be doing a color inspired by this. So we're going to be using those 3 colors. And the first thing I'm going to do is do my stock solution for the brown. I'm not going to do a stock solution for red and green because those will be speckled on top of the yarn. So I'm just going to do one stock solution. And before we do any stock solution, we need to make sure that we have a respirator on because we only have one pair of lungs, so please protect them. And like I say every time, you don't need to use the exact same one as I have. However, you need to make sure that you have one that will protect your lungs so you won't be breathing any fine particles. Because the powder for a dye is very fine and we don't want to breathe it. There we go. So now it is, we can breathe normally. It's only when you have the dry powder open that you need to worry about the dry powder itself. So it's really breathing it that would be a problem. Of course, don't drink it, please. Ew. And that would most likely, it's not meant to be ingested. So don't breathe it when it's in the dry powder, and when it's liquid, don't drink it. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go into the pan now. First thing I'm going to do is add my citric acid. So rule of thumb is 1 tablespoon per pound, so 454 grams. So it's roughly 1 teaspoon per 1 teaspoon per skeins of yarn, because usually the skeins are between 100 gram and 110 gram. And we're doing a low immersion over here. Just going to quickly turn on the heat. And today we're going to use my 100% superwash merino on worsted weight, just to make, just for the fun of trying something different. And I've been pre-soaking my skeins since yesterday. So it's always a good idea to pre-soak your yarn so that you have an even coverage of it. You will have a better color penetration, and sometimes what can happen when you don't do your pre-soak, it's simply that the yarn will sort of look porous. So it almost will look like it's glazed. I don't know if you can hear my neighbor's dogs, but they're slightly annoying. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this penetrate the yarn, and I'm going to wait until it's completely absorbed into the yarn before we're going to be flipping it and we're going to do the speckling. So I will see in a little bit. Okay, so I'm okay with the tiny bit of color that we have. I should remove my cardigan. I'm okay with the water, the color we have in the water right now. It will finish to fully absorb once we let it settle as well. I'm going to remove my cardigan. I'm sorry, friends. It's driving me nuts, and like the sleeve is wet now, and I hate that. I hate that for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my skeins so I can expose the patches of color that are still not as covered in color, because this is what I wanted. I wanted those tiny portion to be still kind of white, not necessarily fully white, simply because peppermint bark usually have those white portion on it from the candy cane, but also sometimes they're made with white chocolate. So that's where I was going for with the vibe of this color. So we're going to expose the white portion a little bit so we can also have a better look to the green and the red, and it's going to be super fun. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly grab my respirator because we need to protect our lungs, because we only have one pair of lungs. So respirator on so we can speckle our hearts out. And perfect. So we have speckle, and always make sure that you keep your fingers stuck together so that you won't have big clumps of colors everywhere. So you basically what happens is that you have a better control over where the pigment will fall that way. There we go. Okay, so now that all the colors are onto the yarn that we want, what we're going to do is we're going to let it cook for 30 minutes, and then I can remove my mask so you can actually hear what I'm saying. So what we're going to do now is we're going to wait 30 minutes for the color to cook onto the yarn now that all the colors are on there. So what we need to do to calculate when we start cooking our yarn is very simple. First, the temperature of the water should be between 85 to 95 Celsius, and you should have applied all the colors you want to apply, so including speckles, and then you count down your 30 minutes. So I will see you in 30 minutes. Okay, let's look at this. So, okay, so I figured that we would have some pocket of color for the red because we usually do. But the rest looks good, so we are good to turn off the heat, and we're going to let it completely cool off before washing off the excess dye to make sure that we don't have any clump of the dry powder. So I will see you when it's time to do that. Okay, so it's time to wash off any excess dye from our peppermint barks. Okay, so like I mention every time, when it comes to speckling, I want to make sure that we don't have any clumps of dry powder anywhere. So this is why we are making sure, and look, there is no color in the dye bath, which I'm very happy with. Okay, so yeah, so we want to make sure that we don't have any, my sink is leaking. Computing. Yes. So we want to make sure that we don't have any clumps of dry powder anywhere left. So this is why we're going to be letting it soak a tiny bit. And you can see here, maybe you can't. Yes, you can. Okay, so there is red here and it's from the speckling. And you can see on my hands that we have green from the speckling because there is some on the tie wraps that we were working with. So this is why now I have, and you can see that the brown is leaking a tiny bit. Browns do that sometimes. Not all of them are that bad. Like pecan brown, pecan brown from Dharma Trading Co. doesn't bleed that much. This color though does seems to be bleeding a tiny bit more. So we're just going to let it rest in the water for about 10 minutes and we're going to come back to do another cleanup. Okay. So we had quite a bit of bleeding in this one, which I was expecting. I'm not surprised at all. Every time that I work with that level of with that much dry powder in stock solution percentage and all that, I have some bleeding happening. So I'm not exactly, I cannot say that I'm super, like I'm not surprised basically. And you will be, so we've already have so much, like a better, well, it's already much better. But what we're going to do is we're going to fill this up again, and I'm going to let it soak a tiny bit after. So we're just going to fill up the basin once again, just so we have the room we need for that. Okay, so I'm going to let this soak and then we're gonna come back in like 10 minutes. Let's see what we have. Okay, so it's much better. I think we should do another one just because I think it would be a good idea to try to get it as clear as possible water-wise, because there's still quite a bit of pigment. So if you were to be using this color with something more pale, like a white or a cream, there would be like transfer bleeding and all that. So this is something that I try to avoid. So I'm going to do another soak, and we're going to come back after. Okay, let's look at this. Okay. I still have a tiny bit of color, but this is something I can live with. You would definitely need a color catcher for a color like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this in my spin dryer and we're going to let it dry overnight, and I will see you tomorrow for the final result. And here's the final result for our peppermint bark. So as you can see, we have still some of the patches of color. So this is not white because we've used that. No, it's not white because the brown did spread a little bit over here, and we wanted to have those negative spaces so that we could have a better view of the speckles that we've done here. So you can see here we have a good example of the green and red speckling, and that's what we wanted. So we wanted to have those negative spaces to have a moment for the speckle to shine. So when you're doing something like this, it's important that you choose a color that you know will spread. So I know that chocolate brown will take longer to strike the yarn. It will take longer to spread. So it will create those soft brown pastel beige colors. So those negative spaces where we'll be able to apply our speckling, and that's what we want. So if you're wanting to create a color that is similar to this is what I would recommend. Grab a color that you know will spread. Don't have something with a low depth of shade. You need to have at least 1% depth of shade to be able to succeed in this technique, because if you have lower than 1% depth of shade, the inside will stay white, or it will stay the same color as your base yarn. So I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please consider sharing, liking, and subscribing, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye!